but I have maybe a inspiring reflection from our newspaper. The campus in downtown Denver has 3 colleges on it, and they've just been gotten federal recognition for the Hispanic Serving Institution, which means they're now eligible for a bunch of grants. And the person that was overseeing that, they interviewed him for the article about it in the newspaper. And his name is Antonio Farias. He's a CU Denver Vice Chancellor for Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And I just felt what he said just touched my heart. He says, I'm more interested in the human formula that's not about the numbers. They're talking about 25% of the campus is Latino. I'm more interested in the human formula that's not about the numbers. How are students finding that CU Denver is a place where they belong? The word belonging is really powerful for me. It means more than just comfort. It means connection, co-creation, and it means control. That you are an active young agent of your own destiny and education. And when I read his bio, he obviously wrote it. He said, he worships his daughter, re-energizes through a plant-based diet, runs ultra marathons to test the limits of why, fly fishes to commune with the divine, and believes failure is the greatest teacher, and he is currently failing to publish his first novel. So I felt like he had a sense of humor as well. And I thought that was especially poignant because he's recognizing the strength of very many of the students at the campus in Denver are dreamers. And Maggie should be a dreamer, but she was sent back to Mexico. You were born, I might not say this right, Maggie, the name of the town where you were born, San Luis Potosi in Mexico, and came undocumented with her parents as an infant in 2008. Maggie was forced to voluntarily return to Mexico and has been active in the deportee and returnee community ever since. And she co-founded Otros Dreamers, Acción in 2015, and she's our speaker this morning. Welcome.
Welcome.
It's I don't know, I invited you if you would want to tell us a bit about your story, and then how about Otros Dreamers came about, and what your aspirations are for yourself and for the organization, and for all the young people that are involved in it.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the invitation. I'm really glad to be here with all of you and get to connect and share a little bit more in depth about ODA and our work. ODA is actually Otros Dreams and Acción, and in Spanish, ODA, which is the 3 acronyms together in English, it means ode, which is a poem that is meant to be sung. And we call it ODA because really, I mean, it's a community that is growing more and more on this side, because we are finding each other. We are rediscovering what it means to live and to be in our lands on this side after so many years of being away. And I think I want to start with that. So as you know, my name is Maggie. I am currently in Mexico City. I was born in Mexico at the age of 2. I migrated with my family undocumented to Dallas and then to Georgia, northwestern Georgia, until I was 18 when I discovered that I was living undocumented, and I faced all of the challenges of being undocumented, especially in the South, in a place like Georgia. And this was during the economic crisis as well in 2008. So the context was very important to understand the situation that led me to return to Mexico. A lot of people call it voluntary return, but in our community, we reject the term voluntarily because at the end of the day, we were systemically pushed to leave our communities because of the conditions of being undocumented and because of the fear conditions. I mean, I think that one of the things or one of the strategies that the government in the United States executes is to really plant a lot of fear in communities so that at the end of the day, they push communities to leave. And that obviously saves a lot of money to the government when families don't have to go through the deportation system, but rather just push us to leave. And in my case, that's what happened. I mean, after realizing I was undocumented, after not figuring out any way to get into university and to be able to remain in the country in a documented way, I ended up leaving. In 2008, I arrived to San Luis Potosí, which is the state from where my family is. I lived 8 years in San Luis Potosí, and then I eventually moved to Mexico City, which is where I am residing. It is important to say that the first 5 years in Mexico, I thought I was the only one that was like me, that had grown up in another place and that spoke another language and that wasn't very completely Mexican to the standards of people here. But in 2011, 2012, I was pretty lucky to find a call for stories on the internet. And it was basically the call for stories for a book called Los Otros Dreamers. This book was published in 2014 and it has 26 experiences of, we were a bit more young back in the day in 2013, 2014, but it was basically 26 experiences are in this book of deported and returned youth who were, we had found each other on this side from various parts of Mexico. I mean, geographically, Mexico is enormous. So one of the challenges that we've had as a community is to find each other because we are all very dispersed throughout the country in urban places and rural areas. So then it becomes challenging. But the book basically brought us together and it gave us a platform to speak about something that nobody had asked us. We were very much in the shadows in Mexico. Nobody was acknowledging our presence here. And that was a sense of a collective sense. And with the book, I think it was the first moment where we came out and we connected. And after that, we started to advocate in the Mexico context, especially in terms of revalidating our US education, because it was being impossible for many of us that had done our education in the US to be able to revalidate it in Mexico so that we could continue studying or get a job or a profession. So that brought us together. But in 2015, I always say this because because I was part of the book, I was invited to present the book, Los Otros Dreamers, in California and various places. The book eventually allowed us to have book tours, and the editor of the book didn't want to just present the book by herself, but she wanted this to be a tool also for our community to be able to present the book ourselves, because we are all authors of this book, the 26 of us. And that led me to get this invitation. I applied for a B1, B2 non-immigrant visa, which is the visa that any person who's not from the United States, in the case of Mexico, any Mexican that wants to travel to the US as a visitor has to apply for this B1, B2 visa, and we have to go to the US Embassy in Mexico in this case. It's very hard to obtain a visa. I mean, it's totally discretion. There's no accountability. It's really discriminatory. It's really based on what that officer just believes, or if we are able to convince that officer that we deserve to go to the US to visit. and in my case, and in the case of my community, even if we've been back to Mexico for 10 years, I'll tell you a little bit about a project that we are right now that has to do with this. Just the fact that we have experience of living in the US and that we have family living in the US, it's a point against us. It affects us even more when we try to get this B1, B2 visa, because the officer automatically thinks that we are going to overstay, even if we have our community, our profession, our job, and everything on this side. That is a really hard barrier to overcome. But in my case, I always say that the officer had a really good night's sleep, and I guess she was a really, like, I don't know what I did, but I got a 10-year visa, which that meant that in 2015, for the first time after almost 8 years of exile, I was going to be able to travel back to the United States, specifically to my community in Georgia. So that was a really turning point in my life and in ODA. We actually ended up founding ODA in California in 2015. So it's been 6 years now since we founded ODA. In 2017, we became a legal NGO in Mexico City. And all of that led because Trump got elected, as all of you know. And we knew that we needed to become more sustainable. And we knew that ODA needed to be a platform that would not only be able to continue our work because there were going to be more deportations, but because we were already a lot of people on this side that had been invisible and silenced for so long, that we knew that with Trump, it was going to be an interesting moment, in the sense that suddenly the topic was going to be out there, which in many ways, I mean, it's a good thing, but for many of us that had already been over here, we knew that we needed to figure out a way to have this platform for our voices to be heard. So that's how all that started. And all that basically is a growing community of deported and forcibly returned people, families that have been on this side, accompanying each other, supporting each other. We're basically our own support networks when we are on this side. We advocate at the local level, but also at the federal level, and even at the translocal level, as we call it, in demanding family reunification, mobility, and dignified conditions for our families here and there. A lot of our work is done through art and culture. We believe in art and culture as a way to really give visibility to the deeper things that we want to talk about. Many times there's a lot more impact through a play or through a film than just conversating about it, right? So a lot of what we do, we have a cultural artistic resource center called Bocha House. Bocha House is where we have our offices, but we also host here all of our activities, workshops, events, and the core group within ODA as well. I forgot to mention, we are 8 people collaborating full-time or part-time right now, but we have a voceria, which voceria is around 15 people who are all deported or forcibly returned or impacted by these policies that have assumed leadership roles. So with voceria, we are able to strategize and to talk about what we need, what we want to give visibility, what is it that we want to focus. And with voceria, we make all the decision making within ODA in terms of what we want to do. And that's, I guess, I mean, there's a lot to go into eventually. I mean, part of the accompaniment that we do is just, as I mentioned, supporting people in every way, whether it's accessing identity documents, getting them into the healthcare system here in Mexico, supporting them with connecting them to jobs, to finding housing, to just basically everything that someone that hasn't been in this country for 20, 30, 40 years might need. But also the mental health support is something very important for us because of the trauma that deportation or just being away from your family and all of that entails. We do a lot of mental health support as well as a community and individually for people that come to us. So those are just some of the things, but I would love to go more into a dialogue conversation if there are any questions or anything that is maybe you're interested in me elaborating a little bit more.
Thank you, Maggie. I guess I would, I have the question of your membership. They find you basically through your traveling and your art and your music and culture activities. How do people find you?
Oh yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of ways. I mean, social media has been a platform where people really find, especially also, I mean, I forgot to mention, but we also accompany people who are thinking of coming back to Mexico or who have a loved one or a family member in detention and are wanting to seek support for that person before they arrive to Mexico. So many people find us through social media, but we've seen that a lot of people find us through word of mouth, basically, because we accompany someone, that person will tell someone else. And because of our networks also, it is very important for us to work as part of networks. So we are in connection with groups and organizations across Mexico, some organizations across Central America, and obviously the United States. We collaborate with organizations across the country and universities. So that is through our networks, I would say that that is one of the main ways for people to connect with us and find us.
Maureen, I'm curious to know how you found Maggie to invite her to this Immigration Spotlight.
Oh, I think Coloradans for Immigrant Rights is a group in Denver, and their immigration work is sponsored by the American Friends Service Committee, the Quakers. And so somehow Maggie got in touch with them. And Gabriela Flora is a friend of mine, and she just put out an email. Would anybody be interested in this organization? And I investigated it, and Loredo gave the organization a $3,000 grant, which was took a while because it had to be wired and it was just a little bit confusing. And I think now it's all straightened out, but that's how I had never really thought about the support that you would need. I just assumed people went back to their families and, you know, and that was that. And of course, there's going to be all these other repercussions and things to consider, especially the mental health that you mentioned, Maggie. And the economic piece too. So yeah, that's how I connected. Alicia?
One of the things that Maggie said when she was back in Mexico City is that some of them lived in the shadows. And I was surprised because that's one of the circumstances that immigrants here in the United States live in the shadows as well. So tell me what that was like then, and why in the shadows there.
Yeah, so first I'll say that when Gabriela is a really dear friend, we actually connected here in Mexico City when she came, like before all that, like 5-6 years ago. Gabriela came to Mexico City, and after that we created a relationship. But then we currently have 2 families who were deported from Denver. So one of them, we were able to get her reunited with her 4 kids just a couple months ago, back after 4 years of being deported. So that's been a huge accomplishment, and she's back to the Denver community now with her kids. And we have another family also who is collaborating with Gabriela, who was also deported a little bit over a year ago. And now we've been able to keep organizing with the family, with the person deported here, but also with the family in Denver. And that's been, I think, a really good example example of our translocal work and what we do with many organizations and families, because we have a similar model like that in other states, especially Washington State, with another collective there who many people have been deported. They work a lot in the detention center in trying to, well, they actually just won and they're shutting it down in Tacoma, Washington, but we collaborate with them in the sense that families that were detained there that they work with come to Mexico, and we follow up and we organize with them, and then we're together advocating on both sides. So I think I just wanted to make reference to that because I think it's really important, the translocal perspective, to not look at it as a broader Mexico-US, but we actually look at it as, okay, Mexico City and Denver, what are we doing across borders together? Mexico City and Chicago, Mexico City and San Diego. And that's how we are able to win victories at the local level, but also organize and make sure that families are not forgotten. Because I think one thing that occurs to our community on this side after deportation and forced return is that we feel like our communities in the US have forgotten us, because many times you will probably hear that someone was detained and deported. Okay, goodbye. I don't, like, on your side, you don't know what happened to that person. You don't know, after being detained, after being thrown to the other side of the border, what happens with that person? Do they even have family? The reality is that many of the times we don't have family on this side. We're not coming back home. We're coming back to a country that in the case of many of us, we left when we were 2 years or 3 years, or even if we left when we were 18 years, now we're in our 40s, 50s. Like just the other case, I have a person who was like 8 months and now he's in his 60s and he speaks no Spanish. Like it's literally coming back to another reality and to another culture and to another place. And that I'll address what Alicia also asked about, what does it mean to be in the shadows? Well, that's what it means to be in the shadows. It means coming back to a place we don't know. It means coming back many times to a place that we have no family. Maybe we have relatives, but we're not in touch and we're disconnected. It means coming back to a specific town that many families, for example, like I've heard so many families say, like, to their kids or their young people, like, try not to speak a lot in public so that they won't hear your accent, and they won't think that we come from the US and we have money and we might, I mean, there are a lot of towns that unfortunately have been taken by criminal activity, and people are living in fear, and people have to flee from those towns to the cities, not only for job opportunities, but also a lot of the times for safety reasons. At the end, there are a lot of transnational companies that are here in, not only in Mexico, but in Latin America, that are wanting to take over the territories of many communities. And one way of taking over those territories is by seeding a lot of fear and forcing people to be displaced from those places and to have to migrate to larger cities, and then eventually have to migrate to other countries. So I think that living in the shadows is a reality for many of us, because again, we're not coming back to family, we're not coming back home. It's a long process. I've been here for 13 years already, and I mean, 13 years later, I've learned a lot about my origins. I've learned a lot about the resistance of my community and my ancestors, and I'm reconnecting with that, and I'm taking that as part of my struggle. But I think that it takes a long time, and it can be very painful, very hurtful to know that we're in exile on this side, to know that we're away from our families, from our communities. And at the end of the day, I mean, I think that all of that has an effect in our mental health, in our state of mind and being here. So those are a little bit of the things that I would say about being in the shadows and connecting them to the previous.
Thank you.
points.
Thank you.
Connie, yes. Connie, you're muted, Connie.
Okay. So Hi, Maggie. I'm Connie and I live in Guatemala, and I am so wowed at what you're doing. I am absolutely amazed at the network that has grown, that you have grown. And because they're very, I mean, they're human beings right here in my town of Panajachel that have what you have lived. They've been tossed back here with every sense of belonging of their humanity, and how they connect to the world has been fractured, and they feel so fractured. And it takes, as you just said, a very long time to reestablish roots in a place where you are not native to the language, even though you might be related to the place. So I think of the balm, the absolute gift of the pomada that you guys are to help those who land back where they don't belong, and they do belong, and they have to grow those roots all over again. So I just celebrate so much what you have done. I'm quite curious, because I know, like here in Guatemala, when somebody gets off the plane with nothing, we have groups that hand people toilet kits of hygiene products and a cell phone, and in some ways try and help them see if they have any family at all that are still here. And some people just get tossed into Guatemala because even wherever they're from. And so do you meet people who literally get off a plane as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, I mean, definitely in the last there used to be actually 3 flights that were coming to Mexico City every week of deported folks. And then later on, they expanded to many other airports in Mexico. So now they were coming back to 3, 4, 5 other states, besides all the people that get dropped at the border, which on a daily basis, those are hundreds, thousands, even across the entire border. So I think we especially in Mexico City, I mean, immigration here in Mexico, so like the Mexican immigration are the ones that are supposed to receive deportees, which that's also been another demand that we have, that it just doesn't make sense that immigration and law enforcement in Mexico receives Mexicans, when on the other hand, they're deporting so many people from Central America and other countries, obviously because of the indications from the United States. But it's insane, and they've never been able to really follow up or give that dignified return that we've been talking about. We just published a report last month called Dignified Return, which are policies that we're proposing to Mexico City in terms of what a dignified return for deported and returned families would look like. But one of those is that there hasn't been any conditions for that. And all of the work that has been done is because of all that and other organizations that we are doing that kind of work, and I mean, it's been so many years and still people are just being, the only thing that they do, as you mentioned, is they give them a sandwich and they give them a 20 peso phone card that most of the times doesn't work, and then they just let them go, and people don't know where they're going. So that is a reality that happens across different airports and in border towns.
Maggie, what about like in Mexico City? Are there shelters, or, I mean, is Pocha House connected with shelters, or, I mean, how do you handle the people, that are coming?
Currently, there are no shelters for deported and returned folks in Mexico City. There are a few shelters that are run by civil society and organizations that work more with migrants in transit from other countries that are going through Mexico. Again, they're not run by the government, so it's all work from civil society. There are a couple shelters that we have been able to collaborate with that will receive people when they reach out to us and they don't have any place. That has been basically just like the only two shelters that we've been able to really connect people. But that's and that's one of the main demands that we have, because for example, in 2019, a person that had been deported 3 months earlier passed away because he was deported first with the help of Mexico and the United States, and all his family was in Washington State. He was just basically dumped. He had a healthcare situation, and he was basically just dumped to it wasn't even a shelter, it was a alcoholic addiction center, rehab center. But there were no conditions or staff or nothing that met his medical needs. He needed hemodialysis, and we accompanied him for 3 months. We went through all of the obstacles that a person could go through. We weren't able to get his identity document right away, which meant we weren't able to get his healthcare situation sorted out, which meant that we had to scale with authorities. And even then they didn't want to give him the medical service, saying that he didn't need it, when in reality he needed it. They dumped him in this addiction place. The director basically let him just die out of pain in the bed of that addiction place. His son in Washington State was trying desperately to get an ambulance from Washington State in Mexico City, and nobody answering him. And then we finally ended up doing his whole funeral service, bringing his son to pick up his remains. Harsh examples, because it really shows what can happen when people are losing their lives because of these policies and responsibility of both states. In this case, Mexico and the United States are working together for that. And I think that is that's one of the extremes of what people can go through, which is losing their lives, like Don Jose, who has been an inspiration ever since then to continue our fight on both sides.
Connie, go ahead.
I'm just curious, because one of the things that you mentioned is that some people who are about to be deported know you and can contact you ahead of time. How is that working? Like in the detention centers, do you have posters or something? I don't know. I mean, I'm just fascinated that the network spreads to people before they get sent back. How does that work?
Yeah, we're trying. I mean, an example. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, right. Yeah. We're trying. We're trying. I mean, that's part of the trans-local organizing that happens between AFSE. Gabriela worked on a manual not too long ago of like shelters and just things that people might need, and she gives it to people in detention centers or families there in the Denver area. So we replicate that with many other organizations that actually are in contact with families on that side, or even are in contact by visiting people in detention centers, and they are able to give out our information so that people can reach out to us or through social media. But most of it happens because of our trans-local collaborations and organizing that happens.
Fantastic.
Gabriella works very closely with an organization, Not One More, in Denver, and it's a group of families. And honestly, I know many of the families have lost people to deportation, and it's just heartbreaking. One of the women, Christina, her husband,
Ah,
Jorge.
she's the one I was talking with.
I figured
Okay,
it
I was
was.
talking about-
Yeah, she spoke at St. Mary's Academy several times. I thought it would be more impactful. They asked me to speak and I thought it would be more impactful if she spoke. And she
Good.
went to the classes at St. Mary's Academy, which is a Loreto school. And I know one of the teachers, when she found out that her husband had been deported, was just really devastated because Christina had been talking about him to all the classes. And it's a reality, and it really got some of the students at the academy interested in that kind of work. So your organization is very impactful. It just has deep roots.
And I think that we also, I mean, a lot of the work that we also do in ODA is to transform narratives. I think that's really important. And I think that is there, because for example, I mean, when someone gets deported or has to return, it's not only affecting that person. I mean, it's not only affecting that family, like it's affecting the entire community. It's affecting schools, it's affecting churches, it's affecting employers, it's affecting the entire community. And I think that we need to shift that narrative, because right now, the United States government, I mean, it's like, okay, yeah, we'll deport them, like they're not from here, like they're undocumented, blah, blah, blah. But I think that we really need to transform that narrative into saying, no, these are people that are from these communities, and people from those communities, like many of you, are the ones that can speak up. I mean, they're not just people that we don't know. They're just not people that are just coming in. Like they're people that have built connections, that have been part of this community. And I think that's what we need to really keep trying to change that discourse that has been harming and affecting families so much. And I think that part of what we're doing also with actually, this Monday, we're going to be launching our annual crowdfunding campaign, Fight for Hugs. Fight for Hugs is basically a campaign where we're talking about giving visibility to family reunification. And also in this case, we're connecting it with visa justice, which visa justice is a little bit about what I shared with the embassy and the United States consulate, and for people trying to get these visas to have mobility between Mexico and the US, which that means they have mobility between their families and communities. Right now, we're currently accompanying 4 people who have been in Mexico for over 10 years, who all returned. And we are applying for these visas, and we're accompanying them in the process, because what they have in common is that all 4 haven't seen one or both of their parents in over 10 years. And they all have concluded their university. They all have a job. They all have their community on this side, but they're still fighting to hug their parents. And we're trying to show the United States Embassy that these people are not going to overstay. They're not liars. They're not criminals. They're just people that have done everything. They've been here 10 years in Mexico, and all they want to is see their family and have that mobility, right? And the Fight for Hugs campaign is a campaign that we launch every year to show the impacts of family separation, but also to show what we can together. We've been able to use these funds to pay for legal services, pay for Mexican US passport, pay for visa. So we're excited to be able to launch that and to now connect it with Fight for Hugs and Visa Justice. And it basically talks about the work that we do with families across borders.
Maggie,
Christina is a really good example. Yes.
I'm not quite sure how to
Second,
pose this.
what did you say about Christina?
Oh, I was gonna say Christina is a really great example about that translocal organizing families, because she is just a lot of power everywhere she goes, and all she has done to try to keep her family together. She comes to Mexico and brings the medicines to her husband. She does, especially as a mom with kids, I think that's a lot.
Maggie, the stories that we hear on these immigration spotlights, yours in particular, are so powerful, are so enraging when we hear over and over about the inhumane treatment that the United States government is doing every day, every day. And your story in particular strikes me as, your personal story is so moving, so heartbreaking. So my question is, do you reach a point where you just don't want to come back to this country? Why would you want to come back to this country that has treated you and all of these other people that you're trying to help so inhumanely? So do you just lose that desire altogether?
Maggie looks a little frozen.
He
Uh,
does
Yeah, there
look-
she
you
is.
hear
There
me?
she is. There she is. You froze on us there, Maggie.
Okay, can you hear me now?
mhm.
Yes.
Perfect. I mean, that's a really deep, hard question that I think for everybody means different things. I mean, for me, definitely, I definitely left the United States in 2008 feeling very disappointed and feeling very angry and feeling very confused and scared. But that was an 18-year-old girl, and now 31-year-old woman. After everything that I've done and after everything that I've gone through here in Mexico, but also then all of the organizing and all of the community that we have built together on this side. And I'm talking from as someone that now has mobility. So like now I'm able to go back and forth between the United States and Mexico. And sometimes in these last years, I mean, I've learned so much about the history. I've learned so much about the resistance of people in Latin America, in Mexico, and I know all of the resistance in the US too, and I know the history of the US, even though I learned that the history that they taught me in school wasn't the actual history. I've been able to rediscover that on this side, and I think that sometimes I don't want to go back. Sometimes I just wish, sometimes I'm just like, I want to be on this side with everybody that is resisting and fighting. And there's I think there are a lot of values and a lot of things that we have on this side, especially the collective sense. I mean, growing up in the US, I was taught to be individualist. I was taught to be materialist. I was taught to, if you want to be successful, you can do it, and it's all on you, and it's because of you. And coming back to Mexico, I realized I'm part of a community. I'm part of the land. I am part of the people that need to defend these lands that have been so harmed by capitalism, by the impacts of that. And I think that the United States, I mean, it's always this like I don't talk about the United States as a nationalist perspective. I talk about my land and my community in Dalton, Georgia. I talk about my family, my friends, my community. Those are the ones that I want to go back. My nephew, my brother is there. Like the people and the land is what connects me and keeps me connected. And that's what I call home still, but definitely not about the nation or the country, or definitely not the values, definitely not what has been done from those systems that many of the times originated from there. Right.
I appreciate that very much, because I think where you grew up, that was home, even though Mexico is your country of origin, as it is mine, even though it was my parents who came here. But yeah, I think I understand what you're saying, that you really grew up and your home was in the US. But I think what you're doing in Mexico, oh my God, just absolutely wonderful. and I'm sure you do it on both sides. And I'm so proud that you have connected with Gabriella and with Maureen, because they're two of the best advocates for immigrants. And, they're working with Colorado for immigrant rights. And, you're on the right track here with those two. So carry on. Adelante con la lucha. Okay.
I want to, oh, go ahead, Alicia. please.
I want the name of the book. And was it published in the US or in Mexico or both? The 26 stories.
Yes, so it was independently published in Mexico. We just got launched the second edition this year. So I'm happy to share the website where you can order. You can get the book as a PDF, but you can also print on demand. So you can order your book and then it'll be shipped to your house. So through the website, you can either download it as a PDF or order a print on demand, and you'll get it on the US side.
Is that the ODA website?
No, I'll share.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I
Give
can
me
put it-
the name of the book.
Oh, it's called Los Otros Dreamers, but it's with I'm putting it in the chat right now.
Dreamers.
Is it
It's
in English or Spanish or both?
It is, but it is both. So from the first edition and now, we were each able to choose what language we wanted to write in. But in the back part of the book, you'll have the translations. We have, it's right now English, Spanish, but there are also 3 people that wrote in their indigenous languages, but you can find the translation in the back of the book. So it's a book that is meant to be read by everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I put in the website there. I think that should work and take you directly. We have a beautiful website that we were able to get this year going. So you'll find a lot of photos, you'll find the history of the book, and then you'll get to the page where you can download the PDF or order your physical copy.
You know, Maggie, when you talked about changing the narrative, that's something from Brian Stevenson talks about it. He writes about the justice system in the US, and he often talks about changing the narrative. And this Antonio Farias that's at the University of Colorado, Denver, in the paper, part of this article, and I think it can be more broadly is more broadly true than just for students. He said, part of becoming a real Hispanic serving institution is changing the optics of the way we look at our students and changing the optics of the way we look at people that we kick out of this country. Students are coming to us exactly as they should be. They are not coming to us with a deficit. Some of this is reframing how we look at them and thinking there is nothing wrong with them. The old model says people are broken because they're poor, Hispanic, or a first generation college student, and that's antiquated. That puts a stigma on people and says they're not worthy. We need time to rethink how we deliver our services and remove barriers. I just think that message of strength is something that I'm really struck with as I've worked with people that are just amazing, that are working so hard to keep their families together, and just one barrier after another, and they're not weak and they're not pitiful, they're strong. There's Christina. I would not want to be on Christina's wrong side ever. She is so strong. So, yeah.
No, thank you very much. I mean, yeah, hopefully I'll get to visit y'all. Last time I arrived, my mom passed away, so I had to come back the following morning. That was 2 years ago, but hopefully there will be another opportunity to go back and visit. There's a lot of organizing there, definitely, with not one more with Gabriella, but also with families who we've been organizing with. So I think there's there's definitely a lot to keep organizing translocally. And I do believe that that is the strategy to go. Like, I feel like there's been, there's been a history of organizing for this like so desired immigration reform that just seems further and further away in trying to negotiate with political parties. But I feel like the strategy is translocal organizing, because I've seen the power of it. I think it's the way to tear down these borders, because translocal organizing means being in communication with groups, with people on the ground over there and here, and putting both narratives and working together to transform those narratives, but also in very concrete ways, in getting money across borders to support people, in getting in putting out these messages of what's happening on this side and that side. And I think that that is something that has a lot of power when it comes to responding to this crisis and to responding to so much harm that has been happening. But I also do think that families have the answers. Families, as you said, like families like Christina, I mean, when you're in that position, in that situation, that's when people resist, when people come out, because that, I mean, when we're forced and we're pushed, I feel like we're all just cornered, and we our response is to resist, to fight back. And I think that if we continue to put families and communities in the center and supporting them with our resources and our platforms, we can continue to make those changes. And they're not small changes. I think that the response are in communities, and that's just the power of it. We also did an event that in 2019 called Flourish Here and There. We are working on having the second edition of it, but we had basically an event from San Pedro Sula all the way to New York, where 15 cities simultaneously, we were having an artistic event at the same time in 15 cities. And that was just so powerful it was an example of what translocal organizing meant and what it has continued to grow into. And it's not just US, Mexico. I mean, we also are in touch with communities in Trinidad and Tobago, in Central America. I mean, there are deported folks in Filipinos, and I mean, we're everywhere. I mean, we have in common that the United States has pushed us out, but I think that by organizing and expanding even beyond just Mexico, the US, we can do a lot more things together, and we're headed towards that. So I appreciate a lot having the space and continuing to collaborate and do it together.
It's wonderful what you're doing, Maggie. And when you said that people just get dumped, it reminds me when they picked up quote unquote Haitians. Many were not Haitian, but they were Black. So they were picked up and dumped in Haiti on those flights that just happened a month ago. So it's so true all over. So is your website up there too, so we can communicate with you?
And will somebody please get us the connection to the website for Fight for Hugs? I mean, let us know how we can
Help.
Yes,
I'll Fight for Hugs.
I'll send it to Maureen. We're supposed to get it published this Monday, and we'll be launching it on all of our social media. So I'm happy to send, I'll send all the websites. I just put our ODA website here. It's not very updated. One of our goals is to work on it next year, to update it and for it to reflect everything we've done. But Les Otros Dreamers, the first one with the book is updated. The new one, the one we have there, and I'll happy to send the Fight for Hugs link once we have it on Monday.
Jolly
Yes.
Maggie, hearing everything that you've told us about what you and your organization have done and are doing, I'm curious. It sounds like you must have hundreds of people in your organization doing all this work, and I'm sure that's not the case. So tell us a little bit about your organization? Are you a 501c3 in the United States as well as an official nonprofit in Mexico? How can we contribute? Tell us about that.
Yes, so we're an official nonprofit in Mexico. We're not a 501c3. We are barely looking into that for next year. We're still researching and figuring out how that would look like. Right now in our team, we're 7 people. Some of them are part-time, some of them are full-time. And we have a team of volunteers. We have a team of people in our community because I mean, as organizing, when we accompany people, they also accompany more people, and it creates a whole network of accompanying. So that's part of our model of supporting, but to replicate that themselves with other new people in our community. We have, I mean, since we're not a 501c3, I mean, people can support our work through campaigns like the Fight for Hugs campaign. And they can also, we have a PayPal account, and we have, especially with the trips that we also do in collaboration, we're trying to go to Texas and Arizona in April of next year if we're able to get the visas for these 4 folks, which what we're trying to do right now actually is we're trying to get support from Congress officials to be able to support the trip. Because right now with COVID, the embassy in Mexico never stopped accepting applications. So they have like a huge backlog, but people, because of the pandemic, are even more eager to be able to see their parents. Like these 4 folks are, like we've been 10 years away, and I'm scared that I'll lose them and I won't see them. And so we're trying to push for a expedited group interview. So that we can make it for April, so that we can go to Texas and Arizona, and these 4 folks will be representing ODA and speaking at various universities and organizations. But of course, it'll also mean that they have their mobility and that they'll be able to go visit their families and communities. So that's part of the work that we're doing for next year in giving more visibility to what's happening with families after they come to the site.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maggie. Our hour is up. This has just been so informative and so inspirational, and I can't thank you enough for taking time to visit with our immigration spotlight. These spotlights are recorded, as you saw, and they're put up on the Loredo website, and I'm sure people will be watching you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Nice to be here.
Nice to
Have a
meet
good
you.
day.
Adelante.
Bye.
Bye. I'll see you in Mexico City.
Eso.
Thanks, everybody. Nice to see you this morning. Nice to